What's up, world? This is Raul with Live Loud, and I just want to thank you guys and welcome you to the first episode of Say It Loud. As you guys know, I'm a storyteller. I'm a visual storyteller through photography and filmmaking. My whole mission behind that, regardless of what situation is going on, is to really celebrate people and what they're up to in their life. Not necessarily just what they're doing, but who they are. And I've been fortunate enough in these last years to be able to travel the world and meet such amazing people near and far. And so we're just gonna go ahead and kick off and hear some stories. The first guest that I have is my man Tony here that we met not long ago. When was that? A year, 2 years ago?
It's coming on a year, I believe.
Yeah, okay, so it's been a year ago. I know a lot has happened in that last year, but he is a founder of a podcast, let alone to do many, many things. And one of the reasons why I wanted him to be a guest is because aside from being a jack of all trades, just knowing so much information on how it could be applied, his methodology and his relationship to his reality, why he does what he does, really stood out to me. And yeah, Tony, man, it's an honor to have you.
Man, it's an honor and a privilege to be on what I knew was going to be coming down the line. You know, it's one of those things where as soon as we had a chance to connect, I was like, oh, this man has to be doing the same thing. You have a story. It needs to be told visually. It needs to be told audio, and it needs to be amplified as loud as possible, quite literally. So living life in full volume and everything coming together, you know, through the most unpredictable of circumstance is exactly how this was supposed to happen. So thank you for having me on. Thank you for, hopefully we're going to set this ship in the right direction, and the stories that come forward after this is going to be really special.
Absolutely, man. So tell us a little bit more about you. You could just go down the list of things of your mastery.
You know what? Honestly, today, that's probably going to be the hardest thing to define as all of the stuff that it's easy to label yourself by what it is you do. But I think now more than ever, it's going to be increasingly hard when everything has to stop. So when we go back into that understanding the why, I think it always comes around, I'm trying to reshape the world and understand it one body and mind at a time. Now, the way that I got into that was seeing systems that are not in balance and seeing systems that are not in harmony. And the lexicon by which I wanted to explore was health and wellness. So previously, before everything stops in health and wellness, I became a domain expert in health and wellness. What does that mean? It means that I'm a journeyman spirit who tried a lot of different ways to figure out this one complex problem, and I failed fantastically in a lot of different ways in failing out this complex problem. That path of failure has taken me through being a trainer and a coach for a host of people, from your basic, just coming into the whole wellness arena, you know, weekend warrior, all the way up to pro athletes, all the way up to people just getting out of rehab. Made it through the maturation process of that. Meritocracy was a thing, and transitioned that skill set into going into more of the operational components of what wellness was doing. Got into tech, got into owning and operating different businesses, all of which I could say don't really have much meaning right now. So who am I is a person who's constantly asking myself, who the hell am I? And I try to understand the world through this movement system, because I think movement art is the way that I love and express inside the world.
That's saying that you're constantly spending time with that question, who am I? What I find so amazing about that, man, is that I think there's some people who will live a lifetime without really sitting with that question, right? Or if they sit with that, if they have that question, they jump to the conclusion, and we attach ourselves to how we want to be defined, our social status, our gender, our role in that gender, our role in our family. We define ourselves and then we fix it. We never question it again. And one of the most powerful things that I've learned is staying in that question.
Yeah, I think it's not until that question is challenged do you have the need to have that constant inquisition. If life was linear and it progressed forward in a direction that was really safe and secure, that I'd never have to question these things. And if meritocracy did hold true, the world would move much differently. But then also, how fun would that story be if we're being honest about it? I've been in that position. I've embodied the hero's journey. I wanted to be somebody who's saving everybody around me. If I'm surrounded by illness, I'd look to cure that illness. I can't save everybody around me. Even as much as I would want to, I want to be a healer. I want to be somebody who does all the rest of these things. If I only identify as that one base aspect, am I ever living my fulfilled prophecy? I don't know. And it's only until you run into the wall that it's going to make you stop, and it's going to make you challenge yourself, and it's going to make you have to innovate. I think that that's where true mastery is going to come in from. And if I'm only defined by that one aspect, then I don't go forward. I have been fortunate to be in that position where you're a trainer. You come across a lot of people in life, and I am masterful at adapting wisdom from a lot of different aspects. And then I just reapply that, reinterpret it through the world that I understand.
Do you have a moment that was really significant in contributing to who you are now, and where did that all came from?
Yeah, I'd say there's a few incendiary moments that come along in that path. Much like life, it is when you have to find that conflict. The first conflict that I had was when I still thought that just accruing more information and building out that skill set was going to be the thing that got me towards success. Success kind of has that, it's the North Star. It's always great to get to, but I don't know if it's a destination that you need to solidify and accomplish, because then where's the journey get accomplished inside there? So this is first conflict inside there. I'm traveling toward this North Star of success, and I'm immediately faced with the conflict of I'm finishing my graduate program. I'm getting all these certifications and degrees, and the space that I was working in, I was overqualified to move up in the chain, which, if you don't understand how also injecting my background and also injecting where I come from inside this world, I could never show up as a Black man and be okay. I can never show up as a Black man and be mediocre. So perfectionism is embedded in that psychology. Just for me to be accepted, I have to do the best that I possibly can. That's really something that I'm now unpacking and understanding, where that shouldn't be the destination. I shouldn't have to be excellent to just be accepted. But at that point in time, that was the truth. I'm immediately faced with this conflict. Now I can be angry, which I was. I could be hurt, and I could have grief. But if I stop there and don't go forward, what am I going to be faced with? Mm-hmm. So immediately, point of departure. And in the grandest sense, if I got to depart, bro, I'm getting all the way the hell out. So don't know if I necessarily packed the parachute and, did things the way that you're supposed to, quote unquote, go on a departure and have to change my circumstances. And that took me, I think we talked about before, in that path of going through Central and South America. And I'm trying to really understand what my heritage is, where am I going, how people are shaping and informing, what does it mean to be a person who kind of lives in both of these worlds but doesn't really quite fit into either one. I'm an athlete, I'm an intellectual, I'm Black, I have Latin background, I have all of these different things where there's a duality, but that duality is never presented on its face just being here. Because I'm going to look at you, I'm going to see these traits, and I'm going to say, this is who you are. And I'm constantly in that, well, that's a part of me, but that's not all of me. Why am I fighting this? So that was the first thing that made me have to realize and reshape what that structure was about. And I think some of the people that you come across in that process are going to be permanently imprinted on you. So as I'm going through the struggle, my clients who are telling me, you're better than this, you need to get out. The love people that I have in my life are saying, yeah, you did do this, you need to change. Everybody else that's actually invested in my life is telling me that this box that everybody's trying to put you in is just never going to be the box that you should be in. And you're going to be a horrible person as they keep trying to put you in this container, because the only thing you can do is force yourself out of it. So changing the system, changing the inputs, changing the exterior was one of the most pivotal points of departure that I've had.
Yeah, I understand that there's difficulty in being formless in a way, right? Like where we don't fit a certain category where we're supposed to belong. There's so often that we can accumulate all these resources, all these skills, all these tools, but it displaces us because we're supposed to be this in our reality. Our society taught us that we're supposed to operate in this type of way. Now, how do we have success in the place where some people could consider we don't belong, And
and I think that's exactly it. It's like, well, if you never expect me to be inside this room and I have to fight to get inside this room, justify once I'm in here that I'm supposed to be here, why am I fighting so hard to be somewhere where I'm just being tolerated, not celebrated? That's not that in and of itself is robbing me of my existence.
Yeah. So I know you have your podcast. You can share more about that you're running. But what I want to hear is this podcast, as the trainer, as this person that comes informed, you don't just keep it to yourself. right? What I know about you is that you constantly want to radiate it out to other people. Where does that come from?
It's a belief that it's exactly how you were talking about. I am not going to be divisible by one trait. It's a belief that if you have the capability to motivate somebody who is wildly world separated from where your existence is. That's my reality as a trainer, is that I had the privilege of working for only C-level and above people for a long time. I had the privilege of having to show value to people who were of the investment population. And if I can find, coming from where I came from, something that they saw valuable, well, that's a key. And once I have that key, I can open up a lot of other doors. And that's realistically, it's just a remanifestation of that process. So if I know that that's something that I see in me, and I don't necessarily commit to the idea of my ego being super special, I know other people who are of the same ilk and other people who can have the same skill sets and who have to, by definition, survive off of their ability to find something relatable to somebody who is completely foreign to you. Well, then we can transfer those skill sets and we can get into a different place. And the Offthestrength moniker comes from that idea that I'm not going to be reduced to just this one thing. I still go by the name A Trainer Called Tony, because that's what people called me, right? But if you ask me about everything else that circulates in my life, I could tell you about a lot of different things, because I touched a lot of different lives as a trainer. I'm never going to throw that away, but I got a secondary, a School of the Hard Knocks MBA from being a trainer. I'm only training one type of person. I got information about how to move around in the greater international community from being a trainer. Being a trainer took me around the world. I'm never going to apologize for that. So I'm not going to hide that identity. But then that's also not the only thing that I do. And I got to get to the why. The core why has always been to elevate as many boats as possible. The core why has always been to get into that system where I could be in a hierarchy and look at that hierarchy and say, you know what, we're all the same no matter what you have. We're all the same no matter what is immediately at your resource. And if I can understand connection and relationships, these are going to be the things that activating this network is going to take me way further than I ever could go solo. We'll go further together. I'll probably go really fast by myself, but everybody's going to go much further if we're doing it together.
Yes, well said. I completely agree, man. That's a harsh lesson that I've had to learn several times over the years. That I remember one person told me that you're a Swiss Army knife building a house, and you could do it, but it's going to cost you something much greater unless you learn how to come together and really go and contribute with tools and be able to receive tools at the same time.
Yeah, that is, so I can give you all of this perspective, and this is hindsight 2020 perspective. Again, remember I said I failed famously all through these aspects. So I am at the benefit of now having to have the great pause and this great reset that everyone is going through. I can look back and look at the accomplishment for what the sake of the accomplishment is. In the moment, I'm only caring about the task and getting better and proliferating and, using these things that I'm trying to do to climb up, to scramble, to do all of the hustle, startup, whatever the culture of coming from scarcity and coming into abundance is, that I had to take nothing and make it into something. Along that route is going to be a lot of things that I took twists and turns on, and I'm fast learning. I make a lot of mistakes, but I try not to get those mistakes to happen multiple times. The ones that do come up multiple times are the biggest life lessons that I've had to learn, and I just carry them the way I carry them. Another part of that, sharing that information, is kind of like, I'm not going to be ashamed about something that I know I messed up on, because if I own it and I know I own it, it's going to never be something that I take going forward again. I have the privilege of living long enough to just understand that now, currently, and I could be as free about that as possible. I'm not going to be, you can't take away anything from me that I haven't taken away from myself. You can't label me as something that I can't label myself. And if I displace all the power from the things that we fear most of the time, what's going to stand on the other side of that fear other than opportunity? So that's a new and evolved approach. In the 33 years preceding this, that was not the case. So I am in a better place today, and I'm constantly looking to be in that better place, because I don't get the do-over. It's never going to work. So innovation is going to have to keep going forward, and I got to keep innovating me, because again, I come to that point where here's everything you thought you were, Tony. Here's everything that the world is telling you about what you were. Where's your intention? What's the destination? Let's appreciate the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So question with that, I consider you an impactor, as I've experienced being a guest on your podcast and what you've been able to contribute to me, to what your stand is, to every conversation I have is about elevating the game, elevating not just your game, but others as well. As you learn lessons and take it, you choose to go and pass it off to other people as well. And I think that's really amazing, man, because you're very intellectual. You could already rest on your information that you've collected, go and just keep your head down and work for some place and make great money and just fly under the radar, but you choose to elevate other people. And also that, like, you confronted so many failures, right? So many obstacles where you tripped, yet you still stay loyal to taking people with you, man. Why? Where does that come from?
I think, I'm born and raised Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. I have the privilege of being an intellectual person that comes really from a lot of people that are not in the same space, but we operated by a different code from day one. And I'm talking about coming out of the 80s into the early 90s, tribalism, whatever you want to call it, coming from that specific culture, your word had to be your bond. That's just straight up and down. Now, I have the privilege of being able to translate that culture into a lot of different contexts, but I still keep the base tenets. One of the things that I can't ever do, Raul, is throw away people just because they don't have the same value that the rest of the world holds for them. If you're a person that I love and you're a person that I respect, I don't care about what the rest of the world sees you as. You're a part of my team, you're a part of my tribe, and I got to bring my tribe as far forward as possible. I think some of the stuff you get called for, and I don't honestly even have an answer for it. And even me identifying that as a person who is usually measured and very rooted in the scientific background, there's a limitation to where science just straight up stops. And there's a limitation to where learning has to stop. So when you say that I could put my head down and use the intellectual side inside of a system and just make money off of that, actually, no, I can't. Because that brain makes for a horrible employee most of the time, because I'm a systems thinker. And if the system has a flaw, my mind is going to find that flaw. It doesn't matter what the system is. Hey, this doesn't look right. That type of innovation is great if you're at the helm. It's horrible if you're not leading and you can't get a justifiable answer, because once I see something, I can't stop it. It's also very complicated in the relationship side. So again, I just own what I own, right? So I just got to own it, right? So it comes from that nature of I need to, again, not just to uplift and inspire, but this is the way I understand the world. I have a hip hop context for most things. I love all music, but I see hip hop. I think hip hop. It has a syncopation, it has a beat, there's a rhythm to everything that I'm going to do. I decode the world, try to translate it as easily as possible. I see a complex thing and I want to put it into the most digestible information, because I want to make knowledge just as infectious as what we're being susceptible to right now. Mm-hmm. If I can unlock that and make somebody else's path easier than I was, then I feel like that's my life's work. And I feel like I'm going in the direction that I'm supposed to be going to. I can't ever get rid of the things that I know to be true. I'm a great collaborator. I'm a great person to be a partner with. If you put me inside a very rigid system, I just know that that's not going to be something that I can ever really succeed in and thrive in truly, if that system is not allowed to be questioned, if that system is not allowed to have some elasticity, because life, as we keep talking about, is elastic. It changes. And when it changes, where do you go? That's just pretty much it. So I've tried that route too. I've tried to be corporate, and it's just kind of like, no, this guy's bad. It's never going to work out. Yeah. He's asking too many questions about things that don't seem to be connected. But in my mind, they always are. And I just try to paint those connections to be better. There was a point in time, and this is another one of those things where I had to realize how to change. There's a point in time where I had to be right. And even if I can take all my knowledge, take all my information, and be, dogged and relentless about my need to be right. And it wasn't until the point that I realized that I needed to be effective in order to move forward that I had to change my perspective. And switching from prioritizing rightness to effectiveness lets me have a little bit more understanding for where the gaps are, even in my talking, because my words don't mean anything if people can't connect to them.
As a participant and also a viewer of Offthestrength, man, I see that the common denominator in all of the interviews, that we have all this wide variety of people that you have as guests on your podcast, but the mission and the kind of the draw, the message is all about elevating people's game. So tell us a little bit more about Offthestrength.
Yeah, man. I say Offthestrength. First, I got to shout out all my brothers on that show. That's my man, KR Jones, my man, Troy Brooks, and my man Corey all came together as a conversation in this same dialogue, right? So I never want to be the only person that has the only voice, and I like to constantly challenge my opinion. So I actually grabbed 3 other people who I knew kind of had slightly skewed and not centered opinions towards mine, because I think that would just be boring. Yeah. How can we paint the most rich sounding picture if I had a story where perspective being different, a father, person that's slightly older but doing the same profession, person that's slightly younger doing the same profession, we all have different perspectives, we all have different points of departure, but what's the common thread? We all kind of want to do this uplifting thing. We all come from a space where health and the context around what we are told and what we are taught, you're predisposed to these conditions, you're predisposed to this economic structure, you're predisposed to all of these things. What would it look like if I inverted that? And we have a Tony Robbins, we have a Tim Ferriss, we have, all of these other people who do great information. How good is that information getting to the people who are in need of it most? Like, I can tell you all about the Tao of Seneca and the Buddhist teachings and everything that I know is great information, but the people who are actually suffering could probably understand this whole dialogue about suffering if it sounded like it came towards them and packaged that in that space. So in the same likeliness, I'm going to take successful people that I deem successful. What's success? What did you start off wanting to do? How close did you get to that? The delta in between that is what I consider success. So it's not about you having money. It's not about you having a, mass amount of things. It's more about what's flexibility in your life, how are you giving back, how are you fulfilling that, and where does it come from? So Offthestrength is a love affair between hip hop and wellness. The greater wellness conversation kind of comes about in that wellness is not going to be one thing. It could be religion, it could be food, it could be your clothing, it could be your style, it could be whatever it wants. I took ubiquity, I put it inside of hip hop, and now I'm going to find people who do, like my man Raul. I know you love the human form. That's a wellness conversation. We're going to break this out. Why couldn't any other fitness show really have photography baked into that conversation? Because they're only looking at you for one characteristic. I think life is a celebration. You celebrate life through the lens. I want to get into the mind that's behind that lens. And that's the Offthestrength story. So why you took the shot, not what you did, where are you going? What's your aspiration? What's your highest level of transformation? That's the story that I want to get to every time. And I try to find it in everybody because I have a key for ubiquity. I'm always going to find it.
Yeah. It is so good. It is so good, man. So one of the last things that I want to touch on, there's a lot of people who are home right now and not knowing what to do with their time, their energy. I know you are a super productive person. There's a lot of times you reach out to people like, I'm on a call, I'm doing this. It's like, aren't you quarantined? It's like, yeah, I'm doing all this stuff from home. So what is something in your expertise, in your knowledge, and part of maybe your own ritual, what is something that people can be doing and taking advantage of this time that they have to themselves?
I think you hit the nail on the head with ritual. I think ritual is going to be one of those things that instills a sense of purpose and normalcy first and foremost. And it's typically the thing that you need to do, that you have the highest aversion to actually doing, is the one that you need to be doing. So for me, part of my ritual, as we've been locked down and I don't even know what day this is I need to have space as a practitioner, as somebody who can do a lot for a lot of other people. My hardest thing is turning that back around for myself every single time. How am I filling back up my cup before I pour out? There's a reason why they tell you when you get on the airplane, put your mask on before you put somebody else's mask on. And that's one of my life lessons, hard learned, that I'm still trying to go through. And I'm still trying to have that forgiveness for myself for instances where that did not happen. I want to save everybody. I want to do this. I want to be, and I have a high aptitude to do that. But at the end of the day, if I'm not fulfilling myself, I know what the degradation of my product is. Yep. So for me, it's instilling that ritual to be kinder to me, to proliferate these thoughts, to accept the fact that they're not going to be for everybody. And that's okay. And if anybody has an issue with that, I say judge my intention, judge my direction of my North Star, and you're going to see incredibly consistent all the way through that path. I want to be better for everybody else that's around me. I want to change these things. Sometimes that change has to happen at the face of abrasion, right? You can't change a system if you can't question it. You can't elevate society if you don't point out, honestly, here's the things that are wrong. And I'm not trying to be abrasive to you. I'm just saying this system just doesn't work for the destination that you want. So for everybody, do that self-work. that internal working out is going to be the hardest thing to do right now. So being truthful, being honest, maybe taking a second to create before you consume on the highest level, and guarding that time, honoring that time, cherishing that time, because everything that you get to do where you get to pour back in is going to make your output 10x.
Amazing. Amazing. So for the people watching, man, establish a ritual. If you have it, elevate it. If you don't have it, what can you plug into your time? What can you plug into your schedule right now to care for yourself? How can you show yourself some kindness in the world and the parameters that we are operating right now? Because there's a lot of things we could be doing for ourselves, for our business, for our spirituality, for our energy, for our health, for so many different things, our connections, our family. We are boundless. And sometimes it takes being stuck within four walls to discover that, oh, wow, we are really boundless. What can we really create in this time? You know, so
exactly.
So thank you so much, man. I want you to drop some handles, man. How can people keep posted, hear about what you're creating, follow your steps and doing all that stuff?
For sure. I am at a trainer called Tony on IG. That's probably where the easiest pickups are. The Off the Strength podcast, we release that Tuesdays and Thursdays-ish now. That time doesn't really have the same thing. We're still putting out 2 times a week regardless, maybe even a little bit more some weeks. You can find us on all major digital service providers. As recent as now, we just added iHeartRadio to that. So that's your Spotify's, everything that you could possibly listen to a podcast on. You can hear this voice talking about these things and celebrating people like my man Raul right here.
Amazing, man. Thank you so much for coming on, shedding some light, hearing more of your story. Yeah, man, I look forward to it because I know we're storytellers and we're going to continue finding ways to keep on shouting it out. You know, as I know Off the Strength, I know a trainer called Tony. Everything that you do is really elevating that stuff, and Live Loud is all about how do we scream this goodness into the world, right? How do we make this as loud as possible and send the message that we will?
Oh yeah, man.
So thank you so much for being on. If you guys know any people who might have a story to tell, have something inspiring, or have their own rituals or have their own practices on what they could be doing and how we could be contributing to ourselves in this time, get connected. Make sure to follow a trainer called Tony. Make sure to follow Off the Strength, and we will be staying tuned to new episodes coming very soon. Tony, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it, brother.
Anytime, my brother. Let's turn that volume all the way up, baby.
Way up,
we
man.
got it.
That was fantastic, man. All right, guys, have a good one. Peace.
Peace. Much love.